Canada and the U.S. support communities, regions, and governments with understanding labor supply and demand, and creating strategies that focus on addressing key areas of priority, challenge, and opportunity. So welcome, Trudy. We are very pleased to have you supporting today's session.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Carly, and welcome again, everyone. This morning is going to be a very interactive session. We'll start with some presentations, sharing some information and insights, and then we'll delve into more of the conversation side where we really will work together to come up with what those next steps might look like. In advance of doing that, I'd just like to share a little bit about MDB Insight. We are a national economic development consultancy. We have offices across Canada, and we've been doing this work since our inception, of actually back in 2007. For me personally, I've had the privilege of working in workforce development and labor market planning for pretty much most of all of my career, so probably dating back close to 30 years. Next slide, please, Jocelyn. MDB Insight, as you can see here, and I'm not going to dwell on this, but you can see that we do a broad range of economic development activities. And the most important message that I want to relay at this point is the direct connection between economic development and workforce development. I've always said that two are, different sides of the same coin. It's very difficult to do economic development when you do not have access to a skilled and talented labor pool that can actually do the work, develop the products, deliver the services, etc., that communities are looking for. And it's really what drives the ability of communities to be competitive, particularly today as our markets are global. I mean, we work in a very globalized economy, and as a result of that, our competition is not just coming from, our neighboring communities or our regions or our provinces or, other provinces across Canada, but it definitely expands, into international and global markets. Next slide, please, Carly. So I'd like to just share, you can see the agenda here on the screen. This morning, we are going to start out, just some quick housekeeping. One of the things that you would have seen pop up on your screen is that this meeting is being recorded. That is for the purpose of ensuring that we don't miss any gold nuggets in the conversation that will be taking place. And certainly, there may be an interest in some of the data or insight that's being shared this morning by our presenters. And Carly and Lana may make, some of this or all of this available to you following the session today. I also wanted to acknowledge that there will be a handout of sorts, electronic in nature, that will be shared with you in the coming days, that captures an overview of the various programs, services, contact information from within your local communities that are offering services, supports to both the employers as well as to the job seekers. And that's an important piece of information that I anticipate will be updated on a regular basis to make sure that it stays current in the information that is being made available to folks. Following the presentations locally, we will be doing a presentation that speaks to some of the findings from recent business walks that have taken place across the communities. And as Lana mentioned, we will be sharing some of the initial data from the Vicinity Jobs platform. I will be speaking a little bit more in detail about that platform later on this morning and sharing with you how that data is collected, how it is analyzed, and of course, sharing with you some of the presentation about how that data can be interpreted. We'll take a quick break at that point, and then we're going to jump into the breakout sessions, and those sessions are about 30 minutes. Folks will be pre-assigned, so Jocelyn will be moving us into those breakout rooms, She'll then move us back into the main room, and we'll just engage in a quick overview of what were some of the key things that we heard during those discussions. And at that point, then I'll pass it back to Lana and Carly, who will do a quick wrap up and offer some next steps. So that's the agenda that we're going to follow for the morning. Next slide, please, Jocelyn. So at this point, I'd like to pass it over to some of our guest speakers who are going to be sharing some information with us. This morning, we're going to be starting with Councillor Tim Lavery and Councillor Louise Wallace-Richmond, both from the city of Salmon Arms. So councillors, if you would like to begin, that would be great. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much, and appreciate the invitation. Jocelyn, do you have that first slide? I can't hear you. Oh, I think you're on mute.
I just briefly stopped sharing so we could see your faces there,
Okay.
but I will go back to the screen now.
Thank you.
And hopefully you can see that now.
There we go. Okay. As many of you know, certainly as employers and as agencies who support the economic sector, housing is a very complex ecosystem. In 2017, when we learned through BC stats that Salmon Arm was the fastest growing community under 25,000, we right away recognized that that was a lagging indicator, meaning that now that we've seen it, we were in a tough spot to be able to address it. So the decision at the council table was made to engage with the community. We established a housing task force, and we quickly got up to speed on this housing ecosystem. So it is a habitat. Human habitat is housing. And when one habitat is at risk, all habitats are at risk is one way to look at it. Or if one rung of a ladder is broken, the ladder doesn't work very well for anyone. So on the housing spectrum or ladder, they're basically to the left-hand side, government assisted housing, for which Salmon Arm was fairly underserved. We've always had some independent social housing and some rent assistance, as all communities do. We were not as well served in terms of emergency shelter and traditional and transitional supportive housing. Through the work of the Housing Task Force, and thanks to the Canadian Mental Health Association and their mandate, they were successful in working with BC Housing on the community housing call. Those are the units across from Roots and Blues, so 60 units of subsidized housing, some geared to income, some deep subsidy, some full rental rate, and 30 units of supportive housing, which are now being tenanted and are almost full. So we've also, so on the left side of the spectrum or the bottom of the ladder, we have been able to work to further strengthen that piece. So people move through their spectrum. Now on the right-hand side of the ladder or the top of the ladder is private market rentals and home ownership. While development is largely the purview of the private sector, municipal government does have a role to play in signaling to the sector what needs are for the community. We do have a community housing strategy, and we do recognize that market rental and what I would call entry-level home ownership are very important for us. For this community, again, we've had another post-pandemic, even mid-pandemic growth spurt, and we are seeing the on-streaming of a number of rental properties. There's 140 units going across from Piccadilly Mall. We're seeing properties, developers recognizing the need for density and an increase in multifamily or high density. So R4, which is multifamily, and R5, which is high density. Typically a community like Salmon Arm would have higher proportion of R1, which is single family. And indeed, we do have that, but we're making progress. I will leave it now to Tim, but we need to understand that because housing is a spectrum, we need to be able to provide opportunities for community members to work their way through the spectrum. If you think of your own experience, maybe you rented an apartment, then you bought a condo, then you got a townhouse, then you built or bought a home. So the role of government, at least in Salmon Arm, is to be mindful of that trajectory and to try and understand that spectrum as much as possible. Thanks. I'll turn it over to Tim for the next slide, please.
Thanks, Lou, and thanks, Jocelyn, for the next slide. Thanks for the invitation here. We just have to note that both Lou and I have a long-standing meeting right after this, so we're going to make our presentation and then we're going to dash to get there. But certainly you can contact us through EDS, and more than willing to talk about this and look forward to the recording of it as well. So Lou's presented the housing spectrum, which is a philosophical or overview approach. This slide here is really the context of land availability in Salmon Arm for what we're dealing with for development. I'll go over this quickly because it just shows how, I should say, keep in mind that small rural local governments who really don't have a lot of influence over the housing market or the industry can help set the table for housing. So I want to go over this quickly, and then both Lou and I will talk a little bit about some of the things we're practically doing. In the upper right-hand side, thank you, with the cursors on there, just over on the cream color, agriculture. So we're talking about a land of about just under 16,000 hectares available within the corporate boundaries. The agricultural land reserve accounts for 38% of that. Going clockwise from that, thank you. Crown forest, 35%. We have no access or really control over that. Developed areas, 11.5% in the gray. First Nation reserves, because especially on the west side of town, there's leapfrogging of reserves, almost 6%. Environmentally sensitive areas, 3.8%. I'm going to skip over the yellow and come back to it in a second, but at almost 2%, 1.8% parks and trails. That leaves within Salmon Arm about 3.4% of potentially developable areas. And that is further constrained by slope and stability, steepness, small agricultural holdings that aren't in the ALR. Much of that land is either unserviced or underserviced or very expensive to service, either for a potential developer or indeed for an applicant, a developer. Mm-hmm. So it's fair to say that Salmon Arm, this council anyhow, and the previous one, we've determined that we actually can't support leapfrog development for a host of reasons, including the high cost of servicing land in the periphery. Instead, the approach that we've taken has been all about encouraging and supporting densification and building up. Louise referred to just across from Piccadilly that there'll be a 6-story rental build that'll be coming in. We haven't seen the likes of that in a long time in Salmon Arm, and certainly to that degree, coming in from a developer who's experienced in this, and this is their development model. And I believe, Lou, they're based out of Vancouver Island, but so this is the sort of development we're going to see. And I guess Lou and I now will just go back and forth quickly. I'm cognizant of the time limitations that we have here, but talk about some of the things that we've done. Lou mentioned housing strategy, R8, which is secondary suites. We've seen a big increase in secondary suites, either in new builds or in renovations. That really helps a lot. It densifies, it brings accommodation up to code, and it helps fill in some of that gap. And when it in the building spectrum, and when it covers that, that leaves another development or another housing unit available. And there's a few more. Lou, I'm not sure if you want to talk about some of those.
Yeah, we have also in the R4 and R5 multifamily and high density changed the bylaw so that congregate living is automatically included in that in order to be able to address different needs of different housing developments. Whereas before that would have been a separate approach a developer would have had to take. Now it's automatically in R4 or R5.
I've also mentioned that as being a small local government, rural government, we don't have a lot of influence of the housing market or the industry for that matter. So for me anyhow, the focus becomes how do we manage this from the middle? How do we nudge? How do we encourage? And that's the approach we're taking. Some of this really does depend, and it's not a cop-out, it depends on the policies of upper level governments. And I think that there needs to be changing mindsets about financing, about what home equity can look like. It doesn't have to be the traditional way of going about things, land trusts, those sort of things. They do have to come, for the most part, from upper levels of government. So with that, Lou, unless you've got other things, I'm done here.
I would just add that, like in any economic relationship, the importance of relationship building. So the city has a very healthy relationship with BC Housing, with different levels of provincial government, and we work hard to keep those conversations open. And we have seen examples of where maybe those conversations weren't so open and things went sideways. So we try to focus on the outcome that we seek, and by and large, I think we've been successful, but there is still quite a ways to go, and I think to be frank, we're never going to get completely ahead of this, but that's also an unintended consequence of being an attractive community to employers and to residents.
Wonderful. Thank you so very much to both councillors. Housing is such an important element in consideration when we are looking at labor force and the ability of a community to accommodate that labor force. On that note, we'll move on to the next slide, Jocelyn, and invite Sarah Martin, City Planner with the District of Sicamous, to share thoughts with us. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the introduction. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes, thank you.
Perfect. So thank you for inviting the District of Sicamous to the Workforce Roundtable. The district has a number of projects underway to help address housing needs. This includes the recently completed housing needs assessment and housing projects in partnership with housing providers such as the Eagle Valley Housing Society and Habitat for Humanity. Next slide, please. The district recently completed housing needs assessment, as I pointed out, which identifies the gaps in housing available in Sicamous. This includes priority groups, tenure type, and housing type. Priority groups include young adults, low-income households, families, and seasonal workers. Tenure gaps include affordable housing and rental housing. Housing type gaps include diverse multifamily options, such as one-bedroom apartments and row houses. So these are the issues that have been identified through our housing needs assessment for Sicamous. In addition, the district has also put out a call for 3 volunteers to participate on the mayor's standing housing committee. Applications are being accepted until Friday, January 28th, so this week. One of the first items of business for the committee will be to review the housing needs assessment and provide recommendations to council on how to update the district's housing strategy, which was created in 2009 by the last committee, to address the gaps identified in the report. As well, the district has a new zoning bylaw, which is currently at second reading, that includes amenity bonuses to encourage the provision of attainable rental units to adjust the district's housing strategy and subject to a housing agreement. Next slide, please.
Is this the right slide, Sarah?
It is the correct slide, yes, but I'm sorry, I'm having trouble reading my notes. So the district recently entered into a memorandum of understanding with BC Housing for their Affordable Home Ownership Program, AHOP, to support the development of new affordable homes for eligible buyers. In addition to this, there are several projects currently in development within the district of Sicamous, or they're actually being built out at this time. So in partnership with the Eagle Valley Housing Society, the district is in the process of developing plans for 16 units of low-income, 16 units for low-income families and 20 units of seniors housing within the town center. Habitat for Humanity Kamloops and the district have also signed a memorandum of understanding for the development and construction of multifamily housing and commercial space on Main Street. The housing component will be mixed tenure and universally accessible. So it'll include multifamily housing as well as commercial space. A number of market units are also being developed subject to housing agreements within the district. These include rental apartments proposed to be constructed at the Best Western and single family lots on Parksville Street. So thank you very much for your time. This has been an update on housing in Sicamous. If you have any questions or would like to connect, I've included my contact details on the screen. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Sarah. We'll just keep moving right along, conscious of the time. So Jennifer Beckett, Regional Manager, Seminar, Work BC Centre.
So hello, everybody. We're here from Work BC, just wanting to touch base and talk about how we can collaborate on employment needs. So first of all, with Work BC, you can come to us to find out how to expand your sources of labor, get advice on training and keeping workers, and learn about how we can match job seekers to employers. So we can assist with recruitment and retention. We can help with job fairs. For Work BC clients, we offer a sustainment program where we follow them for a year into their employment. And during that year, we can offer job coaching, mediation with the employer. We can give disability supports and other supports as identified along the way. For employers, we can help create and advertise job postings. There's a Work BC online job board, which most of you are probably familiar with, that is in the process of changing. I know there's some hiccups with those changes to the new Work BC online job board. We don't actually control that at the local level. That is a ministry controlled job board, but we do give feedback if people have complaints or issues with using it. And locally, we man a job board in our centers, and we have a Facebook page, LinkedIn, and Instagram where we can post job postings for employers as well. So there's different funding options available for employers. There's the wage subsidy, and we also offer job starts to new employees. Any sort of barriers they may have to getting employment, we can help them. Gas cards, work clothing, boots, tools, equipment. So about the wage subsidy, this is, I think, one of the best programs we have to assist employers, and it's a service that provides funding to an eligible employer to subsidize a client's wage. It's an incentive for employers to hire and provide work experience and on-the-job training to an eligible client or somebody who's unemployed. It's just a really great program to get people working, but also really help offset those costs of training for the employer. So it's a real win-win. The employer then provides the clients with the required amount of work experience and training so that they can be productive in the position, and they pay reasonable rates. As you can see from these charts here, the wage subsidy can offer quite a bit of financial support for the training of those clients.
Well, Jennifer,
Okay.
Thank you. That was great.
Yeah, and we just had a final slide that just basically was all of our contact information. And anybody can reach out. There will also be a handout that's given out. Reach out at any time. We're just really here trying to support and doing the same as the employers, having to pivot a lot through all of what we're going through and really try to promote our services and help get the job seekers that are out there connected with employers. So
wonderful. Thank you so very much for sharing that. Okay, Jocelyn, we'll move on to the next slide.
Can you see that there?
Yes,
Joan.
thank you. So Joan Ragsdale, Regional Dean, Salmon Arm and Revelstoke Campus, Okanagan College. Joan, welcome.
Thank you. And I think, Jocelyn, you're going to want me to share screen. Is that right? And do it that way?
Right. I will now make you co-host. And if you wouldn't mind just choosing the share screen feature at the bottom.
Can you see mine okay?
Yes, we can.
Great. Well,
We're getting good at this.
well, hello and welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for the invite today. We've asked to kind of keep it short in terms of a quick overview in terms of what the college can do to assist with labor shortages. So we've kind of set that up. As you can imagine, the college is pretty busy in terms of all of its different opportunities available. So I'm just going to do high level pieces. If you want specifics, we've done contact information and we're so happy to answer any questions that you might have. So in terms of how we can help address the labor shortage, it's really around workforce development. There's really three main areas. First are our skilled graduates. We're graduating students almost every month of the year. We're offering programs 12 months of the year in a variety of different areas. So we're constantly putting graduates out into the community and certainly want to hear from you that we're offering the right programming to meet those ongoing labor needs, both short and long term. Second is in workforce development. This is where we can actually provide targeted services to your business, industry, or organization in terms of training. So upskilling opportunities for existing employees, or maybe a direct purchase of some description that you want to have in place to make sure that will work. We can do that both in person and online so that it is designed to meet your business needs. We really recognize how acute the labor shortage is right now. And the third way that the college can help is through workplace learning and support. That's kind of the new title for what you might know as co-op opportunities. There's a lot of different work opportunities where students can come into your business and be employed by you for a period of time, or maybe I should say secured, because sometimes it's at no cost to businesses. It can help with a variety of things. So in terms of graduates, most of you know, I hope, that there is a campus and a trade center in Salmon Arm. And you can see there's business and office certificates that are offering on a regular basis, health programming, technical programming. I didn't do the whole list, but you get a sense of some of those skills that we're currently offering at the campus site. And we also have many professional development short-term courses. So how to engage your workforce, first aid, food safe, those types of skills you may be looking for in your business area. And you can see we made links on the bottom, both in terms of the web page and contact. So when this is shared, you can see who to reach out to. One of the things I will say, just as we whip through too, one of the things the college is doing is building student housing. It's not on my slide, so we hope to have that in 2023, because one of the things is, of course, our students are working, and that will help us attract more local and international students who will be looking for work likely as they go to school. So in terms of workforce development, you'll see Mary and Brent also on this phone call. We have really skilled teams that are willing to work directly with you to design programming that meets your business needs. And we're able to develop them and deliver them in a way that meets your needs as well. They can be short-term courses that you'll see some examples on your screens, and we can develop fully specialized programs like the HOST program that is being developed to assist with the tourism sector. It provided upskilling in the downtimes during COVID, and it was available throughout the region. We had several participants from the Salmon Arm area where individual employees could go to during those quiet seasons. That's just one example. Again, we'll just do the overview of that. The other thing that's really important in the workforce development area is there are quite a few grants available. Jennifer mentioned that, and our team can help you find grants to offset the cost of those training opportunities as well. And Mary and Brent are great contacts for you in that area. In terms of workplace learning opportunities, this is one area that I don't think a lot of people know about. We have students on co-op or work placements all over our community, and it's an area we're growing as a college. You can see Jessica's information at the bottom. So if you are interested, as summer comes up, you're looking at hiring a summer student, co-op opportunities also have funding options available to them and can be at a really reduced or no cost to business. So great opportunities in terms of hiring existing students. Many of our programs also have capstone projects. So it can be research that your company needs to get done. Those different types of things are available. And finally, we also do a job board. So if you are looking to hire and just want to post your local employment opportunities, we with our COMOT and employment office provide a job board for students and also provide some skills for students on when they're reaching out to find those employment opportunities. And those are the main ways in terms of the ways the college can kind of help with your training needs.
Wonderful. Thanks very much, Joan. And I'm sure if folks have questions, they can reach out directly to get the additional information. Okay, moving right along. Darcie Bromley, Outreach Officer, Domestic Network, Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada, Government of Canada. Welcome, Darcie.
Hi, thank you very much.
Oh, did I miss somebody?
You missed Reed, but we can come back to Reed, no problem.
Oh, my apologies. I went one slide too far.
That's okay. Reed can go first and I'll come in afterwards.
Okay, thanks, Darcie. Sorry, Reed, my apologies. District Principal, Careers and My Education.
There you go, Reed. You're ready to go.
All right. You guys can see my slide?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so good morning, everyone. Yeah, I'm the District Principal of Career Programs and I do some work with technology here as well, including the onboarding of My Education. We really are about helping kids find their path and their future. And you'll see my background, my virtual background is actually a bit of a interesting timing. Just we're doing some sessions with parents across the province around tools that are available through Work BC. There's a parents guide that's available for helping parents have conversations. It's a tough conversation to switch from, did you brush your teeth today to, what are you going to do with your life? And so we're providing tools and resources for parents to sort of help those conversations with kids. But one of the things we've also been talking about locally here is just, really trying to emphasize what dual credit is. And Joan Ragsdale and Brent and others, and we're key partners here in helping develop pathways for kids to get into both academic dual credit as well as trades-based. The beauty of us with kids in high school is that we can pay their tuition. It's a great opportunity for families and a great opportunity for students who have a pathway that they have established. And even if they've graduated, we have some support available to them as well. But essentially from the ITA perspective, there's sort of a well-established and a polished machine there where kids start to discover the trades and then they start to explore and then they can train and they can work in those trades. And we have an industry partnership advisory committee from our community that happening with industry and trends and where we're at with our training pathways and what sort of graduates we have that are coming out of, in particular, the youth train and trades. And I know that Donna Smith here at Skip does a fantastic job, and she's able to share with all of her employers when a particular cohort has graduated and they're looking for an apprenticeship placement. One of the sort of things we're proud of right now is we've reestablished at Pleasant Valley Secondary our hairstyling foundations program. So we're an ITA designated training provider, and we've had some challenges in the past 3 years just finding a qualified instructor, and we were able to secure an instructor that's a certified teacher. Actually came from our French immersion program, who had previously trained and worked in this industry, in this trade, and we supported that teacher with a Red Seal Challenge, which she has passed. So Madame Russell, Jamie Russell's our new instructor at our PVSS Southern School. It's a district program, so we've got students both from our district as well as a neighboring district like Vernon that are coming to train there, and it's a 12-month program. So pretty proud to be able to have a regional training opportunity for people that are pursuing a hairstyling trade. Jessica Landau is someone that'll be familiar to many of you on this call. She works at the college as well in some complementary similar work, but she has a little bit of a contract position with the school district where she's the youth work and trades community liaison. And one of the things we're really trying to do is to establish an employer database so that we can support placements of students and have an up-to-date sort of sense of desire from employers who would like to bring on students into youth work and trades potentially as an apprentice or even into our just general work experience world. Jessica Landau is available by that contact number as well as by that email, and I know it'll be in the recording. So if any of you have any questions about particularly trades-based apprenticeship supports, she can help employers from all basis of signing up the kid to tracking hours to tax credits and benefits and such. In our secondary schools, we have career coordinators that really manage the work experience. And this is an area I know that I have lots of questions from employers. There's some recent things that Lana and I have been looking at around some other districts that have got some sort of job fair kind of opportunities. I've had a number of employers ask me how much they would like to be able to create a job fair for students prior to summer work. And so we're in the early stages of perhaps having one of our first ever School District 83 job fairs. So stay tuned for news about that. But we have a number of kids that, especially with COVID, especially in Salmon Arm with the alternating day schedule they had last year, where lots of kids were getting some really valuable work experience. One initiative I want to also talk about is, I know our tech cluster here often says, when we send out all these emails about trades pathways, so when are we going to talk about technology? I think many on this call will know that our cluster of tech here is pretty significant in Salmon Arm. So partnering with Okanagan College, we're proud to be continuing to look at our Gateway to Tech program. We've had some real success with recent cohorts that we've trained, students getting into the industry and working right away with that. But it's a September start for us when we run this. So we're just doing this course selection right now. We used to have a Gateway to Tech meetup that would, or we called it the Tech Meetup, where we would have all the technology employers and training providers would come to the atrium at Salmon Arm Secondary. Of course, pre-COVID, we were able to do these kinds of things, but this is sort of what came out of that tech meetup, as the Gateway to Tech thing became pretty popular up and down the valley. And I want to just emphasize that one of the things we want to do here is to Joan's point about that co-op kind of thing, is really want to make an integrated work learning component to this, so that when we have students that are training in technology, they may want to actually do a placement. So George Richard is our Gateway to Tech lead teacher, and he's very much in the early stages of connecting with employers in the tech cluster to talk about having a receptivity to having students come from this Gateway to Tech program for integrated work learning opportunities, typically through spring break. So we're talking about a year from now that we would have a cohort that would have recently completed the training, and then they would be looking for placements in our tech cluster. And we're hopeful that that is going to help us feed an emerging workforce development that's a significant challenge, I know, for our tech cluster, is to have students recognize that there's a great opportunity right here within within their region for them to both train and potentially to work. So yeah, that's sort of some of our key initiatives, and anyone looking forward to the Workforce Development Committee that I think is going to flow from this, and the potential for us to meet quarterly. Happy to be a school district representative on that table, and always welcome any of you that would like to sit on our Industry Partnership Advisory Committee. If you're interested in that, don't hesitate to reach out to me through the school district.
Thanks very much, Reid. That was great information, and certainly very important information to share with the group. And Darcy, thank you for being patient, and we look forward to your words of wisdom.
Well, thank you. Okay, just making sure that I have that shared there. Yeah, so thank you for the invitation to participate in today's event. I'm Darcie Bromley, and I'm an outreach officer with Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship Canada. I'm located in the Lower Mainland, but Salmon Arm has been a favorite place of my family to meet in the summers for many, many years. So usually every summer I'm up in the Salmon Arm area, and I've been especially impressed by the well-marked hiking trails in the area and in the surrounding areas. I've made good use of those. Trudy, earlier, I believe you mentioned about at the beginning that it's hard for companies to grow if they don't have access to a skilled workforce. And so along with promoting economic immigration programs, our role as outreach officers is to help employers learn how the immigration system can help support hiring needs. Employers can reach out to us at the email provided here, and we're happy to provide information regarding immigration processes as they look to hire foreign trained talent. So we provide education to assist in navigating the immigration system and understanding immigration options, because we understand how overwhelming it can be for employers who are approaching it for the first time. And we do this via phone calls, emails, seminars. And as you can see on this slide, we're offering a virtual learning series on various immigration topics for employers, and it's specific for employers, bite-sized pieces. Usually it's a 30-minute once a week for about a 4-week session, just to introduce some of these topics to people. Our next session is currently scheduled to start mid-February. And it's also important to note that we're not able to complete paperwork, or we don't expedite applications or influence outcomes for people. So they do have to go through regular processes, but we just are here to help understand what the various options are. So when we do talk about attracting global talent, it's often forgotten that global talent may already be here in Canada. This may be international students, as we heard from Joan already from Okanagan College. And some of those students might have open work permits and be able to work for employers, or they can work while they're attending school for certain hours during the semester. And there's other newcomers in communities. So contacting an immigrant service society in the region might help identify newcomers who are seeking employment. And so there's a number of immigrant servicing societies in Salmon Arm, but also in the surrounding areas as well. So then there's also a job bank that's a national job bank that often employers use when they're trying to attract newcomers. So there's a variety of areas to look for people who are already in Canada. Now, we do understand that employers want to attract top talent to work for their company, and they want a fast and predictable process to do this. So to help employers find the highly skilled workers faster, we did introduce a program called the Global Skills Strategy. And what this strategy features is faster application processing times, work permit exemptions, and enhanced customer service. So for those who are hiring in the tech field, and we just heard recently that there is a tech cluster in Salmon Arm, and I've been aware of that. But the Global Talent Stream is a streamlined process to hiring top talent, such as computer and information system managers, or computer and software engineers, or web designers, to name a few positions that might be applicable to. And there are a variety of immigration pathways that can be used when hiring global talent. Employers in Canada usually need to get what is called a labor market impact assessment before hiring a foreign talent. And this document will show that there is a need for a foreign worker to fill the jobs. And it will also show that no Canadian worker or permanent resident is available for the job. And so, you know, we've heard from the school board as to some of the great programs that are doing to train Canadian talent. And so that should be employers' first go-to place to try to find the talent is Canadians and permanent residents. And so, but if that skill is not available, then the temporary foreign worker program is something that can be used to hire foreign workers. This program, the Temporary Foreign Worker Program, is run by and overseen by Employment and Social Development Canada. And so it is a different government department, but they do have an employer contact center to help support employers in that process. Something that I am able to help employers with is looking at programs where they do not have to go through a labor market impact assessment process. And this is called the International Mobility Program. and it's designed to help Canadian employers hire international workers on a temporary basis without that need for the labour market impact assessment. And usually that is because there's some sort of benefit to Canada. So just to give you a taste of some of the options that are available, professionals coming to Canada under the Free Trade Agreement. So CUSMA, which replaced the North American Free Trade Agreement, there's options for some professionals to come under that category. Or intercompany transferees. So if you have a company that is international in scope and is setting up operations in the Salmon Arm area, international, they might be able to be eligible through the intercompany transferees to bring in key staff members to get that business up and running in Canada. We also have other programs like Francophone mobility. And so we are trying to increase the number of Francophones outside of Quebec. And so there is a way to bring in skilled workers under Francophone mobility so that they do not have to go through that labor market impact assessment process. Or there's also International Experience Canada. And for this, it gives young people, youth around the world to travel to Canada to work, usually for up to a year, just to experience what that workforce might be like, to give them that international work experience. And so often on ski hills, you see International Experience Canada candidates who, you know, if you're at Big White or Silver Star and you run across people who have an Australian accent, often many have come through the International Experience category, just to give you, some options that are available to you. So today, really the purpose is just to give you a brief introduction to IRCC programs and services. But I would highly recommend that you go to the links provided here on how to access global talent to learn more about the many options that are available. And questions that employers might have around economic immigration processes, they're free to reach out to me in British Columbia, and I can provide the support that is necessary. So that's it for me, and I'll pass it back to you.
Thank you so very much, Darcy. That was great. We're going to keep moving along. We're a little bit behind in our schedule, but I think we can make that up, no problem. So no concerns. We promise we will finish on time as we had committed. And of course, if there are any questions for any of the folks that shared information and insight with us over the past 45 minutes or so, please pop them in the chat room, and we will do our best to make sure that those questions get shared directly with those individuals. And of course, they've all provided their contact information, so certainly you can reach out to them directly as well. So at this time, I'd like to introduce Jocelyn Johnson and Lana Fitt, who you've been seeing pop up on the screen, and Lana did the early introductions, to share with us some of the learnings and takeaways from the 2021 business walk that was conducted several months ago. So on that note, I'm going to pass it over to Jocelyn and to Lana. Thanks very much, ladies.
Thank you, Trudy. I'm gonna go through the business walk findings, and Lana will chime in if I'm missing anything or if she has little tidbits to add. But yes, thank you very much, Trudy, and it's so great to see everyone and hear all the really interesting information that's been shared so far this morning. I hope that those of you who are employers on the call are finding it helpful and informative as well. So we conducted our business walk, the 4th annual business walk, in September of this past year. And we had 17 volunteers who helped us with that walk. We were able to reach 83 businesses, and those businesses in total employ the equivalent of 980 full-time workers. You'll see here the first of our findings, but before I get into that, I think most of the people who helped us with this walk are on the call today, so I just wanted to give a shout out to the 6 organizations that participated with us. We had Community Futures, we had Downtown Salmon Arm, the City of Salmon Arm, Okanagan College, School District number 83, and Work BC all helped us out on that day, so we couldn't do it without them. The purpose of the walk really is to get feedback from the local business community. It's an opportunity for us to connect. This year we were able to do it in person, which was wonderful. It really helps to inform SAID's work plan, and of course we report to the city, so indirectly the city as well. And last year we did complete our 5-year action plan, but it is really important, I think, to get consistent ongoing feedback from the business community about whether the programs and initiatives we're running are helpful. If we need to tweak those programs or pivot in some fashion, the findings from these surveys are helpful for that. And then we are able to share out the findings in a final report to the organizations that worked alongside us and anyone else who has an interest. So that, on that note, we will be including the business walk in the handout that goes out digitally after this meeting. So yes, just a quick note about this year's survey, with the 2021 survey. We did a little bit of a different format. We had 3 tailored surveys, one to the downtown businesses, one a standard one, and one to food-based businesses, because as many of you will know, we have launched the Zest Commercial Food Hub, and our facility manager there, Tracy Edwards, who's doing an amazing job, found that it would be helpful while we're out canvassing businesses to get some feedback on local food options and whether they are incorporating those into their menus and all of that sort of thing. So really good feedback there, which I won't get into on this call, but feel free to reach out if you are interested in those results. This year, we also added a component on the impact of wildfires to businesses in our community, as well as disaster preparedness, because we thought those were key topics to address. So without any further ado, let's just quickly get to the results, and I'll try to do this quickly. If you do have further questions, do feel free to reach out. But interestingly, despite all of the upheaval created by the pandemic, we found that the results were fairly similar to previous business walks, and 60% of our local businesses said that business was either good or increasing, 26% indicating fair, steady, and 14% indicating poor or slow. So we found that quite encouraging, given how things could be. And compared to 29, we even saw almost half of businesses saying that their business was doing better than pre-COVID. So really a statement to the resilience of our local business community and the support. We saw a lot of collaboration happening during the pandemic, and I think that was key to the success of many of our businesses as well. So 23% indicated that their business was doing worse, and 24% indicated no change, 8% didn't provide a response. More good news, most businesses are looking to the future with a positive outlook. 66% felt that 2022 would be better. I'm not sure, maybe people are feeling like it just can't get much worse. But one thing we did notice was that the rate of non-response to this question, or the rate of uncertainty, was double our previous walks. So that really speaks to the uncertainty, I think, that the pandemic has created about, we don't know, with restrictions changing and closures happening, it's hard for the business community to have some sense of what to expect in the future. In terms of employment, which is what we're all about today, we are looking at an increase of 10%. Moving forward, businesses feel that they will be hiring, and what we've noted in the findings here is that there is a bit of a skew to this data, because we did interview several new startups, so they wouldn't have had employees pre-COVID. So just a note on that. Global versus local, this has not changed since previous walks either, primarily local. I don't think that's a surprise. We're a small community with a market region of over 45,000, so it makes sense that we would be serving our local market. And then this is really the crux of today's workshop. Our Workforce Roundtable today is supporting local business. They identified labor support as the #1 thing you can see, well far and above any other category. But just to go through the other ones, we did have business planning, financing, expansion locations, succession planning, exporting, emergency preparedness, all listed as options, and that's how those ranked individually. And yeah, I think that covers it. That's the end. Lana, did you have anything else you wanted to add?
I think you did a great job, Joss.
Okay, great. I know time is of the essence, so I'll transfer it to you now. Trudy, are you ready to move on to the first slide?
I am. Thank you very much, Jocelyn. That was awesome.
Okay.
And again, if there are questions specific related to any of the data that was shared, I know Lana and Jocelyn and the team are more than ready to respond. So again, utilizing the chat or direct outreach, I would encourage you to do so. So before we take a brief break and jump into the breakout rooms, we wanted to share with you the findings from some of the analysis that's been done, specifically looking at the labor market in your area. The next slide, please, Jocelyn. So I'm just going to take a moment to share with you a little bit about vicinity jobs. So for those of you that are not aware, I'm sure you are aware that there is definitely an uptake on the importance of big data analytics, globally, not just specifically within Canada. Vicinity Jobs is an organization that is based actually out of British Columbia. Their home base is in Coquitlam. And the president of Vicinity has been doing this work since about 2006, when he was first approached by one of the regional municipalities, actually here in Ontario, as a means of trying to figure out what were the jobs in their region, who was looking at hiring, what were some of the criteria that those employers were considering. So you can only imagine that, when we think about what this may have looked like back in 2006, how much it has emerged and grown and improved, over the past 15 years or so. MDB Insight met Vicinity back in about 2013 when they approached us to say, we have some interesting data that we think really would work well in your space, in the economic and workforce development space. And so after much due diligence, looking at the data and the types of information that was available, we certainly agreed. In particular, prior to joining MDB, I worked with a regional organization that did labor market planning and workforce development at the regional level. And the question that I was being asked in every single community with every single economic development officer that I would meet with is, where are the jobs, Trudy? What are the jobs that are in our area? What is it that employers are looking for? Because it's valuable information to be able to inform whether it's a job seeker who's looking for employment in the area, whether it's a student looking to go into an area of study where they will have that employment opportunity when they come out, after graduation, or whether it's employers or investors that are looking to come into the area. If they want to understand, what's the competition, as an example, for the same type of labor that I may be looking for. And so really that's what the Vicinity platform allows us to do, is to really understand and get a good, strong snapshot of what's happening, at the local region, at the regional level, at the provincial level. I mean, the data is available nationally, but it would really only be entities and organizations that work at that national level that I would suggest would have an interest in that national data. One such organization would be the Labor Market Information Council. I'm sure most folks on this call that work in economic development, workforce development, are familiar with LMIC. If you're not, I encourage you to Google it and to look at the information that they make available through their website. It's become a very valuable resource for those that are in this labor market space. The next slide, please. So, we've talked about the importance of data, and when the more localized and the more recent we can get access to that data, the more valuable it is, because it really helps us to understand what's happening in the here and now. And as you know, I indicated, as you're trying to make decisions, whether it's employment decisions, career decisions, or whether you're an organization or an agency supporting that whole process, the more information that you can have available to help inform that, the more validated your decision can actually be. And so having access to real-time labor market reporting is critically important to that process. Next slide, please. So when we think about the Vicinity platform and the kinds of information that's available, in total, there's about 53, I believe, different variations of reports that you can use to generate information that'll support responding to a particular question that you may have. And so what you see on this screen here is information related to the areas of focus of those reports. So for instance, you'll see very shortly that when we're looking at the data from a location perspective, we can look at that data broken down to the community level. We can look at it in comparison at a regional or district level. We can look at that data at a provincial level. And so what it allows us to do is to do some comparisons of what's happening in one community versus another, what types of jobs are the employers posting for, etc. Where we're able to identify the industry or the NAICS. So NAICS is the North American Industry Classification System. And basically every business falls under some NAICS code. Most businesses, to be honest, probably don't even know what their NAICS code is. And that's okay. But we're able, when I say we, Vicinity is able to look at the information that the employer has posted in that job posting. And about 50-ish% of the time, even if the employer has not identified the name of the business, there are indicators in that posting that lead us to be able to identify who that business is. And by doing that, then we're actually able to identify what that particular industry is. That becomes important when we're trying to understand, for example, if we were looking at data from 2019, comparing it to data from 2021, looking at manufacturing as a particular sector, have job postings increased or decreased? Particularly as we were working through, COVID and understanding the impact, the early impacts and the ongoing impacts of COVID at the industry level. What industries continued to hire as they pivoted or transitioned, in their product or service delivery, as compared to those that were, pretty much shut down for long periods of time and had to displace workers versus looking for hiring new workers. So that information became very, very valuable sort of in that crunch period, but it continues to add significant value as we look at what sectors are growing, what sectors may be declining. And just one indicator of that, of course, is the labor force. We can also look at it from an occupation perspective. So NOC is a term that stands for National Occupation Classification. And again, through federal government departments, there is a system in place that assigns a number code to each occupation, and there's about 500 plus. That system has just undergone a revamp in 2021, and there continues to be work done on that. But what it allows us to do is to give, similar or the same occupation a code. So again, we can use that code when we're trying to understand what jobs employers are actually posting for. One of the big things that has become significantly more important, particularly over, I would say, the last 4+ years, is understanding the specific skills and knowledge that employers are looking for. So in the past, oftentimes employers would put postings out there, making statements that, minimum requirement university degree, or minimum requirement, college diploma, or 2 years college or college certificate, etc. There would be a variation of those. Now what we're seeing is employers are being more specific to the skills and knowledge that they're looking for. And so when we're doing analysis on these job postings and we're able to identify what are the skills and the level of skills that employers are looking for to fill this posting, that becomes significantly valuable information, again, to job seekers, to our local post-secondary institutions, to employers themselves to understand what skills other employers looking for similar talent might be looking for. And those skills are broken out actually into 4 different categories. And you'll see some of that when we share the data with you. Level of education and certifications. Again, this helps us to understand the requirements of employers in our economy. So do we have employers that are primarily looking for highly educated individuals with post-secondary credentials? Or are we looking at employers that are primarily looking for certifications, trade certifications? Do we have employers that are posting jobs for those that perhaps have graduated high school, or perhaps those that are more ready to transition into the workplace without having achieved any of those credentials? So it helps us to understand the level of skill and the level of education that our employers are needing, which really speaks also to the types of employers and the types of jobs that are offered within our local economy. And then, of course, understanding things like, are these jobs full-time or part-time? I remember numerous situations when I was working in the field as one of those regional workforce organizations, where my communities would say, sure, there's been, 500 job postings, but they're all part-time. Nobody's hiring full-time. Well, when you look at the data, I was actually able to say to them, that's actually not correct. 67% of the jobs were full-time employment. So what the data allows you to do is to demystify some of the anecdotal or the perceptions that may exist in the community and add some really validated, credible insight, and that's based on data to confirm what that local picture actually does look like. Same thing with, jobs. Are they permanent? Are they temporary? And of course, understanding the employers, which ties back to the industry codes, is an important consideration. Who are the top employers? Who are the employers that are posting the most jobs in our community? That's valuable information, both from a job seeker perspective, from a student perspective, and certainly understanding, the gentleman that spoke from the school district, building that employer database that really helps to inform initiatives such as that. So we'll move on to the next slide, and I'm going to give you a little bit of an overview of just how this actually works. So as you can imagine, job postings appear in a multitude of sites. We are talking online job postings, number one. And it's not unusual for those job postings to be, in 4, 5, 7, 10 different places online. And so the system monitors these job postings through all of these various sites. And it collects that information and basically stores it into what's considered to be the intelligence gathering engine It's the brain. All of the information comes into that brain. What's important to acknowledge here is that job postings come through all different manners. Some sites are validated websites. And what I mean by that is if you've ever posted a job through Canada Job Bank, the number of steps and validation and the types of information that you need to input is very specific and pretty onerous. It's a very controlled space where we can have confidence that those jobs are real jobs that are posted on that site. There are other sites where perhaps there's not that same protocol, and we don't necessarily know if those are real jobs. An example I would use would be Craigslist, Kijiji. You can post to sell your dishwasher, you can post to buy a car or tires, and you can post for a job. So there's not the same rigorous process to ensure that that job posting is necessarily a real job posting. As a matter of fact, I've had previous clients call me to say, they went on to one of these sites and there was a job for a drunken truck driver. So obviously that's a bogus job posting. I can't imagine any employer would look for that. So that's the distinction. The Vicinity platform draws only from sites where there is a high comfort of a high level of comfort that this job is a real job posting. The information goes into the brain. It's cleaned on a regular basis. And, part of that cleaning is deduplication. So I had just said that it's not unusual for the same job posting to perhaps appear in a local online newspaper. It may appear on the employer's website. It may have got picked up by Indeed or some of these other job boards. You mentioned several job boards in your own community. So they may pick up these job postings. And when the Vicinity system is going out and pulling those job postings all together, it's potentially pulling it from 1, 5, or 7 different websites. But the most important part of that is that the system then deduplicates. So what that means is that through beginning with an algorithm, jobs that are the same, so the language is the same in the posting, they get sorted and cleaned, and the job is actually attached primarily to the first site that it founded, secondary to the employer site. So where the job is posted on an employer website, it's that website that it would be attached to as its source. Where it may not have appeared on an employer site, but perhaps was in a local newspaper or on one of the paid job sites, it would be attached to whatever that first site was that it found. In order to make sure even further that there's no duplication, the system, the data has real eyes on it. So there are quality assurance officers that look at that data, make sure that the data is reflective of individual job postings. Now, we all know that there is, always cause for error. And the Vicinity platform uses a plus or minus 10% accuracy. So there's a 10% chance that, a job may be attached to the wrong NAICS, or that a job may be in there twice. Over the past, I would suggest 4 years, that plus or minus 10%, while that's the stated guarantee, we've seen the data fall somewhere in the 4 to 5% plus or minus. So there is significant accuracy in the data. And that's been even further validated by organizations such as the Labor Market Information Council. If you go onto their website, you'll see a report, because they are a user of this information to produce reports that are shared nationally. but you'll also see that they did their own analysis, and they actually have a report on their website that speaks to all of this. So it's not just, you know, Vicinity saying this is so, it's been analyzed. There's also been comparisons of the Vicinity data with data that has come through Stats Canada. So, you know, the annual reports that Stats Canada produces based on labor force information that's collected on a regular basis. You can see the correlation between both sets of data, the difference being that this data is available, you know, on a weekly, monthly, or quarterly basis, however you want to access it. So once all of that's done, then the information is cleaned, and the subscribers to this platform, which would be organizations as, you know, Salmon and Sicamous and Community Futures, Shuswap, et cetera. They would be the types of organizations. Provincial governments utilize this data in many of the provinces across Canada. Organizations such as, you know, the Conference Board, as I said, Labor Market Information Council, and numerous others use this information to try to inform their analysis and find answers to the questions that are top of mind for them. The next slide, please, Jocelyn. So I'm going to share with you a few slides. And again, this is really just the tip of the iceberg. And as Lana and Carly had mentioned, you know, now that this subscription is available for your area, there will be, you know, quarterly reports, perhaps infographics, things of that nature that can be shared with you so that you can understand how things are changing over time. Particularly important as we start to come out of the pandemic and we start to look at how our economy and our employment opportunities are being rejuvenated. So what we've done here is we've looked at the data for the study area, looking back to 2019 to 2021. So this includes data basically from January 1st, 2019 to December 31st, 2021. And what it shows you are, you know, the 4 geographies that are identified in the platform, and the number of job postings that were found within each of these geographies, within each of these timeframes. You know, Salmon Arm, of course, being certainly the largest as with regards to the posting. Jocelyn, if you move to the next slide. Here, what we've done is we've broken it down by each of the 4 geographies. So for Enderby, you can see here, these are the job postings by industry sector. So we looked at what were the top 5 industries. And you can see here that about 44% of the postings were in healthcare and social assistance. About 18% were in accommodation and food services, and about 11% were in retail trade. And you can see the breakdown of the number of postings within each of those sectors over the 3 years, with 2019 being the blue and 2021 being the vibrant pink that you see there. The next slide, please. So this slide takes it a little bit beyond just those top 5. And we're actually showing you, I think there's about 12 or 13 sectors that are identified here. And again, so you can see sectors beyond those initial top 5, you know, what did it look like? So you've got things like manufacturing as an example. You've got things like, you know, construction, transportation and warehousing, you know, retail, real estate, et cetera. So you can see other sectors and what the job postings were sort of pre-COVID and moving out to and including the end of 2021. Next slide, please. So the next slide is showing us occupations. And so these are occupation categories. And again, so what were sort of the top 5 occupation areas? And again, you can see here that, about 21% were in sales and service, about 14% were in trades, and about 12% were in healthcare occupations. Then, of course, you can see business finance, and then there's other that are unidentified. So what the unidentified means is that there is not enough information in the job posting to actually attach it to an occupation code. So the employers are saying, here's what we're looking for, but they're not giving enough information. They haven't said that we're hiring a salesperson or we're hiring a nurse. They haven't been specific in what the occupation is, and there's not enough information in the posting itself. So all of the information that you see presented here is based on what the employer actually put in the job posting. So one of the things that becomes really important, and I know WorkBC talked about doing some follow-up sessions with employers. One of the things that's really important is helping an employer to understand the importance of clarity in the job posting itself. And, the more clear those postings are written, the more job postings can be analyzed and can actually be attached to the specific occupation for which it's being posted. Next slide, please. Len, I just want to mention, I'm seeing slides only. I'm not actually watching the chat, so I don't know if there's particular questions popping up. But if there are, certainly feel free to share them, and we can certainly respond at least to a few of those.
I'll let you know, Trudy, if
Thank you. So the next one looks at Salmon Arm. So again, job postings by industry. And again, we can see the breakdown, and off to the side there, you can see, 30% over this time period were in healthcare and social assistance, 26% in retail trade, and 11% were in accommodation and food services. What's interesting here for me is, we can see that in 2020, there was a significant drop in job postings. Like if you look at healthcare as an example, and in 2021, no surprise, we saw a significant resurgence of job postings, particularly within healthcare and social assistance, certainly that being the highest. In retail trade, we can see that there were a lot more jobs posted in 2019 than what we're seeing in 2021. We can see that, it's about half. And again, with accommodation and food services, we're seeing a rise in job postings. And so that helps to really do two things for us to look at this data. It helps us to understand the what is true, so what is happening. It also helps us to develop questions in our minds that potentially, if we are doing a walk through our businesses, or we are working with a particular employer or a particular sector, we can pose questions to them around this. So, an interesting question here would be, we know that based on online job postings, and we know not everybody posts online, but the data does demonstrate that right now there's about 70-ish% of job postings can be found in an online setting. Even if the employer wasn't the one that posted it, it makes its way to online. But here we could start to ask some questions. So, we're starting to see a resurgence in job postings in accommodation and food services. What's driving that? Is it because you're super, super busy and you need to bring more people on staff? Or is it because some of the folks that worked in the past in this sector have now left the sector and you're trying to recruit new people into the sector? So you can really start to probe based on the information that you're seeing here and really try to understand what's really happening, on the ground in your community with your employers. And bringing this type of insight into that conversation, again, fuels the conversation to be much more evidence-based than anecdotal. So, those are just some examples of ways that I know that communities are using this information. The next slide, please, Jocelyn. Again, this shows it as a bigger breakdown for you so that you can see, what some of those other sectors are. For instance, in Salmon, our manufacturing, you can see that there's, all through the pandemic, still a drop in 2020, but still 46 job postings. So I would suggest that some of your manufacturing facilities probably did a bit of a pivot. I know that there are manufacturing and food, food processing facilities and breweries, et cetera, that really pivoted on a dime and shifted from, I was going to say making beer, but everybody was still drinking beer through the pandemic, but, making sanitizer as an example. So it's interesting, again, to look at these other sectors that may not have fallen in the top 3 or 4 or 5 to see what was happening, particularly in those sectors. The next slide, please. And again, we can see here based on occupations, where were the occupations? So sales and service. Interestingly, sales and service was higher here. Health occupations still stayed pretty strong in Salmon Arm over the past couple of years. We can see the increase in trade, transport, and equipment operators, and the business, finance, and administration type occupations. Again, we can see how they've, it's almost up, actually slightly above pre-pandemic for the business, finance, and admin. So it helps us to understand what were those areas or categories of occupations that were being posted. The next slide, please. This looks at Sicamous, and again, we're seeing the same thing, with the breakdown. Accommodation, food services, we saw a significant jump in 2020, which is really interesting and something that you probably would want to dig a little bit deeper into and understanding, over what period of time were these businesses closed? Where were these jobs? What employers were hiring for these particular postings, et cetera. Next slide, please. And job postings. So what were the types of jobs? And again, you can see here broken down by the various categories. As I said, interest in accommodation, food service really scored at the top. Transportation, warehousing, manufacturing, all the way down through, construction as an example. So construction was pretty low. There was only 1 job posting in 2019 and nothing that's appearing in 2020 or 2021. Now, again, you need to remember that this information is based on enough information in the job posting to actually be able to attach that posting to a particular industry, right? So there had to be something in there that would have allowed us to identify, the employer or the sector that that job was posted in. And that's where the plus or minus comes into play. That's also where your local insight comes into play. So for instance, in Sicamous, Curly, if you're aware of, well, how can there only be 1 job posting? I know that there's this massive construction project, and I know that they've posted lots of jobs. So that insight that you may have from being on the ground is an important layer of what you need to put over this information and dig deeper into the data to see if you can try to identify, was it an issue with the way the posting was, or, whatever the case may be. So local intel is always important to apply to this when you're doing the analysis. This slide shows Sicamous, and again, what are the occupations specifically? In Sicamous, we see occupations in education, law, and social, community, and government services. I don't think we've seen that one pop up in the other 2 communities that we've looked at. The next slide. So the final community was Sorrento, and again, job postings. The 40% were in finance, which meant 7 job postings. So again, you need to take into account the population of these communities, the number of businesses in these communities, and that becomes an important part of the analysis. The next slide, please. This shows it broken down by some of the other categories. And the next slide, please. This looks at by occupation category. And again, about 38% of the job postings over this time period were in sales and service, 14% in transport and equipment operators, and about 11% in natural resources, which includes agriculture. Next slide, please. So what we're sharing here with you is we looked at all of the data, so not broken down by any one community, although it can be, but looking at all of the data and trying to understand what were the skills that employers were looking for as they looked at this data. So this first slide is showing us by soft skills. Now, again, for those on this call, you're probably very familiar with the term soft skills, but it's those skills that are required, things like teamwork and customer service and communications and interpersonal skills and, working with others and problem solving and all of those kinds of skills that would fall into those categories. When we look at the skills taxonomy within the platform, there are literally tens of thousands of skills that are identified. And so when we looked at the data that we've just shared with you, but we grouped it together as a whole, what you see here are the types of skills that rose to the top in the job postings looking from 2019 to 2021. And what I find interesting in looking at this data is whether or not there's been a shift in skills. So were there skills that we were looking for in 2019 that have gone down in demand? Or were they, have they gone up in demand? What might be some new skills that would be introduced? And I mean, we just looked at sort of these top skills, but you could look at this across the top 50 or the top 100 skills, and you would start to see whether or not employers are introducing additional skills or new skills to their employment thinking about their recruitment and what they're looking for. We can certainly see, some of these leadership, was 207 job postings across your region looked for leadership. That's now jumped to 410 in 2021. So that's a significant increase. Why is this important? Because if I'm a job seeker and I'm looking to apply for a job posting, I want to emphasize my ability to demonstrate leadership in that posting. If I'm a post-secondary institution, I want to identify where across our curriculum are we building skills related to leadership, because our local employers are looking for skills in leadership. Communication skills went up, flexibility absolutely went up, organizational skills. So you can see here, fast-paced settings. So the ability to be mobile and responsive and, multitasking, all of those things would fall into that fast-paced setting. And you can see again that there's been a significant shift. And it shows you in the far right side, the percentage of postings that were requiring that particular skill. Next slide, please. So the next slide is showing us not specific soft skills, but specialized skills. So what are those occupation-specific type skills that employers have been identifying? And you can see here again, which ones were in 19, which ones were in 2021. Did they increase? Did they decrease? Now, keeping in mind that part of that decrease may be because there's also a decrease in the job postings specific to that occupation. And that could be in part because businesses were shut down, or business just declined because of the pandemic. So again, you need to look at the data and then think about what else do I need to consider here when you're doing the analysis. The next slide, please. We're almost done. Time for break coming up very shortly. Education requirements. Again, this tells us over the area the percentage of postings, or the number of postings that we're looking for, college diploma, master's degrees, high school completion, no education required, undergraduate degree, etc. So you can see that across your region, a significant portion of job postings are looking for college diploma or certification. And so when we look at that and we look at those actual jobs themselves, the occupations, you'll see the correlation between the types of jobs that employers are posting, which identifies, in this case, you can see the type of education or credentialing or certification that the employers are actually looking for as a means to fill those job postings. And last but not least, we've shared this one slide. Now I want to add a caveat here in that looking at the labor supply is a very challenging process. In that, privacy legislation and restrictions on the types of information that can be shared, the types of information that can be drawn from sites, for instance, wherever there might be profiles, job profiles. So like Indeed, as an example, you can go in and create not a job profile, sorry, a personal profile. And share information in that profile. But what we have found in the past probably 3 to 4 years is a significant decrease and a significant increase in the number of firewalls and barriers that have been added to sites such as Indeed. So it became much more difficult to get a picture of what that labor supply looked like. Now, there were already challenges with the labor supply data because, again, as well as I do that not everybody puts a job post or makes a job personal profile when they're applying for a job. There are many people that have no online profile. And so we were working with a smaller data set as compared to the job postings on the demand side. But this just gives you a sense. We are still collecting this data for British Columbia because of work as a requirement with the work that we're doing with the government of British Columbia. And we're using other sources to be able to extract this, but it's not something that we provide as a subscription generally. But I did want to just share with you when we were chatting the other day, Lana and Curly, this was one of the things that you were looking to help at least get a sense of. And so here what you can see, in 2019, broke out by occupation category. There were about 149 jobs looking for in management occupations and about 118 job seeker profiles that actually identified experience in management occupations. And you can see that over time. What's interesting, that my big takeaway from this is when I look at 2021, you can see, you can see where some of that supply has declined. And again, is it because they've not kept their profile up to date? Is it because they removed themselves from the labor market, et cetera? So there's lots of things to consider. But the total postings, when you look at, you can see that in total there were demand for, almost 6,500 postings across these categories. And on the supply side, there were about 4,100 folks that had a posting or a profile online, and how that aligned within each of these categories. So I don't want you to focus a lot on this, because this is not data that's currently available, at least not through Vicinity. There are other platforms out there that do offer this information. And so if that is something that you're interested in, I'm certainly happy to have that conversation and share some of that information with you. Okay, I'm going to stop there. If we can stop sharing the screen, Jocelyn, and just go back to the group, that would be great. So I'd like to just in 2 minutes or less, any questions? If anybody wants to raise their hand, we're certainly happy to cover off any question that you may have. That was a lot of information that you took in a very short period of time. So certainly recognize that. And, I'll share my details after this. And Carly, of course, and Lana, as well as Rob, have the platform. So they have access to this information. And, you can certainly feel free to reach out. I'm throwing you guys under the bus here, but you can certainly feel free to reach out to either of those organizations. I'm sure they'd be happy to answer your questions. So any quick thoughts before we take a 9-minute stretch break? We've lost 6 minutes of our break, so hopefully everybody can still grab a coffee in 9 minutes. Okay, I'm not seeing anything, so let's take a break real quick, and we will come back for 11 a.m. Thanks very much, everyone. Hopefully you're enjoying the session. Yeah, perfect. So I'm just going to take a moment and explain what's going to happen in the next 30 minutes. So basically, Jocelyn is going to break us out into 3 rooms. There are 3 questions, which I will share with you. You may want to jot these down because they may not show on your screen when you break into the room. But we will, there's note takers and facilitators in each of those rooms. So we'll keep reminding you of the question that we're trying to answer. And we'll have an opportunity to chat in our room about the question that our room has been assigned. So room number 1, for instance, is going to look at what local strategies must move forward in the next 12 to 24 months to respond to labor market challenges. Let's identify the top 3. And then it gives you some probing questions there about things that you want to think about. The opportunity will present itself potentially in your room that you've discussed this question, you're happy with everything that you've identified, and you still have some time left within your 30 minutes. So then you would move on to the next question. So you actually have an opportunity to potentially talk to all 3 questions, depending on the amount of discussion and dialogue in your room. Jocelyn, if you could just share the second question. So the second question is about the formation of a workforce committee in your area that would be designed to support the strategy development as well as implementation. So in this session, we're going to just have a conversation around, what this committee might look like, who should be at the table, who's missing from the conversation. And we may not necessarily know that, but we can identify organizations that come to your mind. And following the meeting, Lana and Carly and Jocelyn can look to see if someone from that organization actually participated. If not, it creates the opportunity to reach out to them. And then the third question is really about employer engagement. So how do we get employers and local businesses more engaged in this conversation? And we know that as folks working in workforce development, employer engagement is probably one of the biggest challenges that we all face. So what are some strategies, best practices that we may be aware of about how to actually engage with our employers and to make them see the importance of the role that they play in labor market planning and workforce development? So on that note, Jocelyn, if you wanted to assign us, we'll get a note that we're moving into a room, and Jocelyn will arbitrarily move us back at 11:30. So enjoy your conversation, everyone.
There may be just a bit of a pause as I move everyone in. So your turn.
I thought we would just take the next, 7 to 10 minutes to kind of just recap. And again, if anybody's got any additional comments, put them into the chat. If we don't get to capture your input verbally. So who was the note taker for group number 1?
That was me.
Okay, so Lana, did you want to share some of the key points that came from your discussion? And then I would encourage others not in that group or in that group to share anything else that comes to mind.
Sure. So we were kind of all over the place, but I tried to capture some of the key points. There was definitely some good conversation that happened with our group. So I think, some of our strategy suggestions relate to some of the other two questions. So a committee formation, we really thought that is an important near-term step.
Is that okay?
Yeah, you bet.
Thank you.
That's great. Yeah, so we thought a committee formation was definitely a good near-term step, but also acknowledge the importance of creating employer linkages for that committee to be successful. So as service providers, we have to know that the work that we're doing is going to provide a high ROI back to our employers. And so we need them at the table to be engaging in that conversation in order to ensure that what we come out with for action items actually reflects what's needed in the community. So we had some ideas on how to do that, which kind of leads into the next question. But, really leveraging some of the relationships that our existing service providers have is an important one. We need to be able to show value back to our employers in order to get them engaged at the table. So we have some events like the Tech Meetup, the Shuswap Entrepreneur, there's others, and I know all of our organizations have different events and different relationships that could be leveraged to get those employers at the table. One of the things that was discussed is there's an example, best practice example from a North Oak labor market group that was established and a strategy that rolled out of that. Richard Chopazard spoke to that in our group, and just recognizing that, that group had several industry participants at the table who really engaged in the strategy development. The next, of course, is not going to be surprising for anyone, housing for workforce, so attainable housing, but also rental housing stock. We talked about a few things around strategy for housing support, but really maintaining that focus in our communities, really noting that attraction is actually not the biggest barrier right now. It's actually housing our workforce that is, and keeping our eye on the prize there and staying focused on anything we can do to support that rental housing stock and attainable housing prices in our community. Another was creating connections and supporting our marginalized workforce. So how do we connect our employers and our service providers to our marginalized workforce or underrepresented workforce? And then how can we also promote safe employers? So those employers that are safe places for our marginalized employees to work at, and how can we be making those connections better? Creating a communication mechanism. This was something interesting as well. So this, we don't have a clear picture of what it looks like, whether it's an online communication board or an e-news, but we think it's important to have two-way dialogue occurring, and that it's real time, so that we have the ability to share information on programs and services. Employers can ask questions and seek information on either employment programs or how they can be successful in securing employees and maintaining those employees, retaining them, but also so that employees can be part of that dialogue too. So again, an online board or e-news blast, but some way to engage in dialogue between employers, service providers, and employees. The last is supporting our employers with creating their own internal labor market strategies. We know based on our business walk, where we were asking these questions and other outreach, there's a lack of HR strategies and HR policies within our local businesses, and we think that supporting individually the entrepreneurs in our area in creating HR policies and employee attraction policies, as well as focusing on creating safe workplaces and understanding the importance of that and what that means, would be beneficial to employers in helping them with both attraction and retention. So those were some of the topics that we covered quickly in our group.
That's a pretty comprehensive list. Any other thoughts, comments, anything that you think was missed if you were in the group, or anything that you didn't hear, but sort of top of mind for you for those outside of the group? Okay, not seeing anything. Am I missing any hands? No? Okay. All right. So, group number 2. Jocelyn, if you can move to the next. Yeah, perfect. Thank you. So again, please, anybody in the group jump in if what I've got here is off or there's something that I missed. But some of the things that we talked about was the importance of industry leadership and representation. How to attract influencers to be part of this committee. So who are those folks, organizations, businesses in our communities that when they speak up, folks listen? So there's a respect and a credibility and a recognition. We certainly need to define the role of the committee. We talked about co-chairs being perhaps somebody from a private sector. So we're maybe one of those influencers or industry leaders could co-chair along with a representative from either a public or not-for-profit organization to kind of share that role. There was recognition that we absolutely need to be diverse in on the committee. Significantly important was the identification of inclusion of Indigenous representation. That diversity, equity, and inclusion, keeping that DEI sort of top of mind as the committee and subcommittees are formulated. There was talk about, who was calling the table. Where does the table sit, or committee, whatever language it is that you choose to use. The term secretariat was used. Who might be the secretariat body that ensures that, agendas are set, meetings are set, notes are distributed, things keep moving forward. People are informed and continue to stay engaged. In response to that, there was some discussion around, is this an opportunity for the economic development bodies, Shuswap wide, to sort of be the lead organizations to help pull this and move this forward. But then there was a concern raised about, well, who would be the higher voice? So it can't just be based on population. If Salmon Arm is a larger area, it doesn't mean that Salmon Arm controls the committee or controls the table. It must be regional in scope. Groups like obviously Shuswap region, Indigenous representation, should the chambers be involved, large employers, SMEs, etc. We talked a lot about the engagement and inclusion of employers, but we also recognize that employers are very busy. It was acknowledged that in some cases they're very cranky because they just have too many things to, pulling their time and pulling them in many different directions. Is it about having a table full of employers, or is it about having a group of individuals guiding and moving this concept forward where employers have opportunities to step in and step out. And that there should be funding in some way for the person who's coordinating this. It should be, a paid function, because the one thing that will drive success is, somebody who's got this as their top priority, that it's not just sitting on the side of a desk of somebody else who's already got, 15 things that sit on their responsibility list. I think that pretty much covers it. To my team, was there anything that I missed?
That's a good summary, Trudy. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Thanks so much. And any other thoughts or comments? Again, add them into the chat, or share them directly with Lana, Carly, Rob after the fact. Make sure that you get your thoughts. Something will circulate following this meeting, which will provide opportunity for further dialogue and discussion.
Trudy,
Okay,
Trudy, I think
go
it's
ahead.
Carmen here. I think there was one thing maybe that is worth noting for the whole group is Candace's comments. Maybe I missed that in your thing, that Work BC is really keen to take a leadership role in this and has some committed resourcing to that.
Great, thanks for raising that. I'm just making notes so that I don't forget that to include. Awesome, thank you very much. So we'll move on to group number 3. So Carly, I guess this was you.
Yes, thank you. So we had a really good discussion as well. So our question or our topic was, Joss, if you want to move us to room 3, how might we get employers and local businesses more engaged? So again, some great conversation. We had a diverse group, which was awesome. We found that there was a lot of value mentioned in the workforce committee. So, but it had to be something that had low time commitment, was super efficient, and recognize that yes, employers will get a lot of value in this, but time and resources are an issue. So one of the solutions that we had a lot of conversation about was boots on the ground. So making sure that, we look in, especially the smaller communities, that a lot of our business owners are owner operators, or they've lost enough staff that they have to invest a lot more of their time and resources to make their business a success. So making sure that we come up with solutions that allow us to actually get in front of these employers. And again, it's a collaborative effort. So that could be something that comes out of this workforce committee in terms of developing those best practices. Looking at getting that real-time, real in-person information about, is it job posting support? Is it, are there challenges with our smaller businesses that have shifted to a remote or an at-home work schedule where we can't physically get in front of them? And how do we best communicate them without, trying to monopolize some of their time? We know that this would have been a great platform for a lot of businesses, but on a Tuesday in the morning, perhaps that's not the best time to have them come and attend these. So what can we do? What resources and best practices can we create or get into their hands that would be very beneficial? The next thing we talked about was looking at a directory. So I had mentioned that one of the outcomes that we wanted from this particular project or this particular session was to create a resource document that outlined all of the speakers, all of the service providers, and give some information that tells the employers or what services these service providers do provide. And we discussed that it would be very beneficial to deepen that project. So not just a name and an email address and a one-liner, but maybe we do get into a much larger and developed directory, both online and one that we can hand out and engage in those conversations, with our businesses. So taking a look at the Skip directory and seeing, what the benefits were from that. Jocelyn brought up the business forum that SAIDS had done in the past. And again, it's another way to get all of the experts in a field in a roundtable situation that if an employer can make it, they are able to get that access to that information. Jennifer brought up some amazing ideas in terms of how to get employers to create better job postings. So she took us through some stats about the amount of people that are on EI, and eventually those programs are going to end, and how do we encourage that workforce, get them comfortable with getting back out into the workforce market and the labor market, and help employers understand some of the barriers that those potential workers have in terms of re-entering into the workforce. We did talk about housing again, and where, you know, we do have to recognize that with housing being a real challenge, when business, Brent brought this up, that businesses understand that when they post a much more attractive job posting, they can potentially be poaching from their in-community, you know, business partners. So making sure that we understand that that's a consideration, as well as we're coaching businesses or helping businesses create these better job postings, you know, making sure that not only we're addressing the barriers of the people looking to get into the workforce, but also those barriers of that community sense of the employers that need those workers, but understand that they, without housing, obviously they would be poaching, you know, creating perhaps another job opening within their own community. So in essence of time, I feel like I've summarized that, but Jennifer, Tanja, or Brent, did you guys want to offer anything else?
I think you did great.
Awesome. Thank you very much, everyone. And thanks to the group for the conversation. If you don't mind, Jocelyn, just moving to the next slide.
Candace has her hand raised.
Oh, perfect. Thanks. Thanks for that. I can't see. So Candace, please go ahead.
I just wanted to make a quick comment because we were talking about who would be involved, and we're talking about industry partners, employer reps, and all that. Can we have some employee reps, people from the labor side, actual people working who can provide the insight? I mean, we all have ideas and we all are employees ourselves, so we can give that insight, but actually to have a designated like employee rep sitting at these tables might also help.
Great, thank you. I'll make note of that to add into the notes. Thanks for that. Any other thoughts, comments before we go to wrap up? So my contact information is here on the screen. Please, if you have questions, comments, anything that you'd like clarification on from my perspective, certainly happy to respond. And on that note, thank you very much for all of your conversation, your engagement. It's been a great morning. I'm going to pass it back to Carly and Lana, not sure who's speaking, just to do a quick wrap up. So thanks very much, everyone. Hope you enjoyed the session.
I'm not sure who's speaking either, Carly, but I'm happy to jump in with a few words and then leave some time for you as well. So from our perspective, we just really appreciate everyone's time today. I think this is a really good first step towards something that could be impactful for our region from a labor market standpoint. It's been a long time coming. I think there's lots of conversations happening from different organizations noting the importance of this issue right now. And so I'm really excited to sort of have this session completed and be able to move forward with some next steps. So from our perspective, so Alex DeChantel wasn't able to join today, but he was really integral in putting this session together today. And he is a shared position between District of Sicamous Development Corp and SAIDS. And so Alex will be working on developing the resource that we've talked about that we will be sharing with all of the participants in today's session. So we will be sending an email out inviting all the service providers to share further information on employment programs or other initiatives that they're aware of that should be included in that resource. A short paragraph, a couple of sentences, a link to a website, anything like that would be valuable. Contact information for organizations that offer employment programs or resources for our employees would be great to include. So stay tuned for that email. The next is on a quarterly basis, District of Sicamous Development Corp, SAIDS, and CF will be sharing the labor market data available through our vicinity subscription. So we'll have real-time data to work from now for our labor market planning going forward. So that's really great. And again, thank you to CF for that support. And then finally, I think, you know, there's definitely something here in exploring the workforce committee development. If nothing else, for a communication mechanism for all of our organizations, but hopefully with a bigger goal of collaboration and joint planning. So we've heard from WorkBC, we talked to WorkBC preceding this session and had some of those conversations around how do we move that forward and what role they take. So I think there's more to come on that, and we'll be exploring that and bringing information back to this group as well. Carly, is there anything you want to add?
No, Lana, you've summarized that perfectly. So again, just from my perspective, I want to thank everybody as well for joining us, and huge thank you to Trudy and Rob, especially for working with us to get these synergy jobs data. I think it's going to be a really great service and information moving forward.
Awesome. Okay, thanks very much, everyone. Have an awesome day.